lot to you that he's Asian American?
Yeah, because it shows that any Asian person can make it to the NBA.
It's fun to actually see him play.
How do you do, Mr. Miller?
Marilyn, I was asking Milton what you thought of that look cover that he did of you.
I liked it very much, although I like most of Milton's pictures.
The year is 1955, 10 years after the United States drops the bomb in Japan and effectively ends World War II. The country finds itself in a tenuous battle for world influence against communism and the Soviet Union. On the surface, the US is firing on all cylinders domestically, thanks to a boom in the economy due to several factors, including the obvious fact most of Europe and Asia is still recovering from total destruction. Citizens of America are afforded a standard of living and lifestyle unbeknownst to the common man prior. Televisions enter the home, and with it comes the advertising of modern and affordable products that help spur the shift in American consumerism that changed the country forever. For most, it confirms the belief that anything can be achieved with hard work and that the USA is the one place in the world that gives an opportunity to go from broke to rich as the iconic poet 2 Chainz put it.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Yet beyond the surface of this near utopian lifestyle of the average American family that makes you think of good old Tommy and Sally with mom and dad in their nice suburban home with the white picket fence is the ugly and brutal reality that the country remains disgustingly short in living up to its own ideals that all men are born equal. Because during the same time in 1955, the US accounted for 1/3 of the world's total production, despite making up only 6% of the world population. Natural-born US citizens such as Rosa Parks are not allowed to sit in front of the bus. A 14-year-old kid named Emmett Till is brutally murdered for the color of his skin, and black professional athletes, such as Jackie Robinson, are constantly having to fight for their right at the table. Note my pivot to Robinson here is not to downplay the significant and historic narratives of the Montgomery bus boycott or the ruthless crime against Till that deserves countless hours upon hours of critical review, but rather to set up the discussion of today's topic. You see, as Jackie Robinson famously broke the color barrier in 1947 as the first African American player to enter the MLB, the symbolic importance of this achievement that receives universal acclaim present day often drowns out the raw and overlooked courage and remarkable mental toughness Robinson showed in performing as the most hated player in Major League Baseball. From being called the N-word by fans on the road every game to having to worry about pitchers throwing the ball at his head, it is amazing to think about the bullshit he had to deal with. Beyond everything else, however, Robinson's opportunity mainly came from having an ability far above the average MLB player. Because at the end of the day, when you look different from your peers, you can't just be one of the guys, you need to be one of the top guys. Fast forwarding over 60 years later, in the year 2020, despite a rapidly different landscape in which equality across American professional sports isn't just an ideal but a demand, there is one group of people that are still getting the short end of the stick. Now, while we're at the point where we can take this conversation in many different ways, my goal is to focus on one particular player whose story is an example of a constant challenge faced by Asian Americans with respect to athletic competition. Before rushing to judgment, let me first say in no way am I here to claim that the prejudice towards Asian American athletes today is in the same ballpark or stratosphere as the overt and blatant racism that African Americans battled in the 20th century. By the same token, however, I cannot help but notice the subtle undertone of bigotry against Asian Americans when it comes to their lack of opportunities and talent evaluation in the athletic world. As I'm sure most of you are aware of Jeremy Lin, I want you to understand his rise into the NBA is not just a feel-good story, it is also a tragic tale and a major indictment against our society. Growing up in Palo Alto, California, Jeremy Lin had a dream like any other kid who played basketball. He wanted to play in the greatest league in the world. And while he accomplished this feat in extraordinary fashion, I honestly find the backdrop to how he reached success more alarming than inspiring. Because because as a high school senior who averaged 15.1 points, 7.1 assists, 6.2 rebounds, and 5 steals a game, Lin was not only the best player on a team that upset Mater Dei for the state title, he was named the California State Player of the Year for his efforts.
Best feeling to go out on top. I mean, it is a dream come true.
Yet, for all his accomplishments and clear high-level ability, he was somehow unable to lock down any Division I scholarship offers by the time he completed high school. Not a single scholarship. How in the world is that possible for a top 5 player in the state? Well, if you look at the NCAA database of Asian players within college basketball, you will see there is a grand total of 118 Asians out of 18,816 total hoopers. That's not a typo. In other words, there is one Asian player for every 160 players, or if we were to assume 12 players make up one team, there is one Asian player for every 13 college basketball teams. Even if it wasn't said out loud, there is no doubt this shocking level of underrepresentation played a major role in Lin's struggle to be taken seriously by schools like Stanford and UCLA, who both passed on him. Of course, this led Jeremy to take a non-scholarship spot at Harvard, in which yet again he would go on to prove he was as legit as they come, finishing on the Ivy League first team in both his junior and senior seasons. When you consider how he performed against nationally ranked schools like Boston College and UConn, the question on whether he was an NBA player should have been a no-brainer. In fact, Houston Rockets general manager Daryl Morey spoke about this in hindsight, admitting his very own analytics-driven model indicated Lin was worthy of a top 15 selection in the 2010 NBA draft. But for all this fluff talk, Jeremy would not be picked at 15, nor would he be picked at 60, as he went undrafted. Once again, notice that Lin had to claw his way to the table, mainly because of NBA draft scouts that called him a smart player, yet had limited athleticism and speed. Probably the most stereotypical report you could have. Anyways, without going into too much detail, as we all know, Lin would begin his ascent over the next 2 years to the moment of one of the most talked about 2 weeks in NBA regular season history, Linsanity. After bouncing around at the end of the bench on teams for several years, Lin burst onto the mainstream in February 2012 to deliver epic performance after epic performance. I mean, it was nuts. Game winner one night, 25-10 the next night, 38 points against the Lakers after Kobe said he had no idea who he was. Nobody was prepared, and overnight, Jeremy Lin went from fringe NBA player to eternal global icon. Being the first Asian American player of Chinese or Taiwanese descent to play in the NBA, his rise was unbelievably inspirational to all Americans, but of course, he was a real-life pioneer for Asian Americans who also had a dream to play in the league despite their race and background. By the end of the 2011-2012 season, it was no longer a question of if Jeremy Lin was an NBA player, but rather a question on how good he would end up being. Unfortunately, due to many factors outside of his control, the truth is, we would never find out.
Jeremy, is there one thing that you focus on when now you go to Atlanta and say, okay, let's get something going early in the first quarter and get myself going just to kind of get this vibe out from what's been going on the last couple of games?
You know, it's the thing. It's, I don't, it's, I don't know, man.
Before discussing further, I want to pause here just to confirm everyone can understand the obvious but subtle prejudice Lin had to deal with just to get to the point of Linsanity. Remember, the only reason he got a chance to play minutes with the Knicks in the first place was because D'Antoni had literally no other options. He tried to put Iman Shumpert and Tony Douglas at point guard before giving Lin a shot. Tony Douglas. Simply put, the NBA already had failed him at this point. I call this out because you would think that once Lin got to the peak of his career, the respect players and coaches had for what he could do would override any preconceived notions of how good he really was. But that didn't happen, and this is why. Development 0.5, Carmelo Anthony could not handle Jeremy Lin on the Knicks. FYI, I'm not counting this as a full development, just a half. Look, I like Carmelo and I'm happy he's back in the league doing work for the Trailblazers, but he will always have a black eye in my book for the way he treated Jeremy Lin during the whole Linsanity saga. Although I won't say Anthony was the main reason Jeremy ended up leaving the Knicks, it was unbelievably obvious how uncomfortable Carmelo was with Lin in the spotlight and leading New York to victory. He couldn't even be happy for him when the Rockets offered Lin a life-changing deal that would take care of his family for life, and Carmelo actually told reporters it was, quote, a ridiculous contract. Haha, funny Carmelo, you want to know what I call ridiculous? A grown man who gets paid $238 million in his career, yet attacks another player for getting a contract they actually earned. Because if we keep it a buck, the $238 million owners paid for your services over your entire career equated to 0 titles. Talk about a terrible return on investment. Development number 1. Lin's reputation was unfairly damaged significantly by playing alongside James Harden and Kobe Bryant. For those that are familiar with Jeremy Lin's career immediately post Linsanity, you will recall the Rockets signed him in July during free agency after the Knicks failed to match a 3-year $25 million contract. As Daryl Morey was a major fan of his game, there is little doubt he planned to unleash him as the #1 playmaker heading into the 2012-2013 season. Opportunity struck, however, in September, and the famous deal to bring James Harden to Houston occurred, putting a pause on Lin's chance to elevate his game to all-star status. Instead, Lin deferred heavily to the ball-dominant style of Harden's play and shot only 11 times per game that year. While he started all 82 games and averaged 13.4 points, 6.2 assists, and 1.6 steals on a solid 44% shooting, the perception of his year was seen as a bit of a letdown in comparison to what he had shown on the Knicks a year prior. So even though his modest numbers were a direct result of a lower usage rate, he was being unfairly casted as a player that didn't produce enough, and the Rockets revisited his place as the team's starting point guard, starting him only 33 games the following year. During his time with the Lakers the next season, it was more the same, as Lin was just not a great fit alongside Kobe Bryant, and head coach Byron Scott used Lin as a scapegoat for the team's poor defense, when in reality, the entire team didn't play D, including the 36-year-old Kobe by that point. I mean, I'm sure Byron Scott's a good guy and means well outside of coaching, but the dude literally did not have the balls to criticize Kobe.
I feel like a father, though. I mean, this is my boy.
Scott actually benched Lin multiple times to replace him with Ronnie Price. No disrespect, but who the hell is Ronnie Price? Look, I'm not here to say Lin was playing lights out for the Lakers or the Rockets, but to see his opportunity as a starter so quickly questioned and put in doubt for things that were not his fault makes it blatantly clear the subtle prejudice against Lin never truly went away. I guarantee you, if the Rockets never traded for James Harden, his entire career could have played out completely different. Development number 2, his triumphant resurgence was unfortunately halted by injuries. So there's really nothing I can say to sugarcoat this one regarding an unlucky break that had nothing to do with Jeremy's race whatsoever. Although Lin had to prove himself on another team yet again, the true travesty was the fact he got injured just when he started to get rolling. Because after being a team guy and coming off the bench for Charlotte in the 2015-2016 season, while being highly effective I might add, Lin finally got a shot to return to the starting lineup full-time with the Brooklyn Nets and head coach Kenny Atkinson. If we're being honest, Atkinson was truly the only NBA coach in Lin's career that actually believed in Jeremy beyond him being a borderline starter and or bench player. Averaging 21.3 points, 5.7 rebounds, and 7 assists per 36 minutes, Lin was playing some of the best basketball of his career before he got injured. Nonetheless, during his 2 years in Brooklyn, he only played a total of 37 games, and the injury-prone label was placed on him heading into his final season of his NBA career. Development number 3, the NBA gave up on him prematurely. As Jeremy Lin won an NBA title last year with the Toronto Raptors, the bigger story was his admission that he did not feel like he deserved much credit as he barely played throughout Toronto's playoff run. However, in case you forgot, Lin actually started last year with the rebuilding Atlanta Hawks and actually looked pretty much as healthy as he had ever been. Playing in 51 games for Atlanta, Lin averaged 10.7 points and 3.5 assists in only 19 minutes of contest. If we looked at his per 36 minutes, this skyrockets to 19.6 points per game on 46% shooting. Comparing him to current players in the league, there is no question he should still be in the NBA. Yet for some reason, not a single team gave Lin a call this past summer when he became a free agent. So in the culmination of realizing how much he had to prove just to get to where he was, and how quickly the NBA just shoved him aside when there are legitimate scrubs in the league he's far better than right now, Lin had a human moment and broke down in front of a live audience last summer.
So free agency has been tough because I feel like in some ways the NBA is kind of giving up on me. Man, it's hard.
真的好难哦。
Life is hard.
人生真的好艰难。
For the people that argue he should get over it as he made $65 million in his career, as like some number justifies him not having emotion, please have some perspective. Think about all the times as a kid he was told he can't make the NBA. All the time Stanford, UCLA, they said no even though he was easily worthy of a scholarship. The times he balled out at Harvard only to not be drafted in the NBA because of his race. The times he had to reprove over and over again to everyone, even after his breakout Linsanity run, that his game wasn't a fluke. And now, being told he can't even get a veteran contract as a player who brought so much to the game and who inspires so many. With that context, it is not hard to see why he's crying. He's getting f***ed over. But this time, there may be no more chances left. The NBA, a league that is supposed to promote inclusion and diversity, should be ashamed of themselves for not doing more to dispel the racial stereotypes that have negatively impacted Lin's career. I mean, come on guys, this guy is the only Asian American in the NBA at this point in time. It may make us feel a bit uncomfortable, but it is an ugly truth we need to be more honest about for when more and more Asian American players hopefully enter the NBA. Why is it we are so quick to doubt the effectiveness of Asian players, and why do we not do more to check our biases? How the f*** is Jared Dudley in the NBA and Jeremy Lin is not? It may not be intentional, but there is no doubt the prejudice is still incredibly potent. So although he has moved on with his life and is now playing in China for the Beijing Ducks, don't get it twisted. It wasn't Jeremy Lin who failed in the NBA of becoming a true star. It was the NBA who failed Jeremy Lin. Anyways guys, that's the video. Hope you enjoyed. Another controversial topic that I think may be a bit polarizing, but I just had to put out what I felt. Look, I admit it's an opinion piece, but I'm hoping you guys are truly able to understand the subtle discriminatory patterns here, as they are pretty obvious to me, but sadly, I still think some may not follow. What do you guys think? Agree with the idea that Lin got unfairly treated? Do you think he'll be in the NBA again? Comment your thoughts below. With that said, hope you guys have a great rest of the day or night, or whatever time it is. It's your boy Kobe. I'll be back at it soon. Peace out.